Good evening and welcome to the 580th episode of Travel Itch Radio. I'm Dan Schlossberg along with my co-host and producer Roger Noriega, and we are in the 14th season of Travel Itch Radio, the show that lets you enjoy the pleasures of travel from the comfort of your armchair.
Every week at this time, we talk to people representing destinations, hotels, airlines, railroads, car rental companies, and others in the world of travel and hospitality, from authors and bloggers to broadcasters and publicists. If it's got anything to do with travel, it's got everything to do with Travel Itch Radio.
And our guest today is Jay Smith, owner-operator of Sports Travel and Tours, official tour operator of the Baseball Hall of Fame. Welcome back, Jay, to Travel Itch Radio.
Thanks for having me, Dan and Roger. It's a pleasure. Always a pleasure to be here with you guys.
The big news for you must be the Baseball Hall of Fame's class of 2025 announcement. 5 players, including 3 former MVPs and a Cy Young Award winner with strong New York ties, plus the first inductee ever from Japan. Do you think we might have a crowd bigger than the 87,500 who showed up for the 2007 induction of Tony Gwynn and Cal Ripken Jr.?
Well, with the magnitude of players and their geography, it's very possible. We're thinking that it will be. It's going to come really down to the Japanese audience and how fast they decide to come. Right now the yen is not doing that great against the dollar, so our costs are a little bit more costly, but the Japanese seem to be interested. We are getting people trickling in at this point, and we've set a lot of seeds, so we're keeping our fingers crossed. And I do think it might come awful close.
Is it true you went to Japan on a recruiting trip even before the near unanimous election of Suzuki?
Yes, I've been working with the Japan audience for quite some time. I went to IPW Trade Show, which is the largest international travel trade show in this country, in May, and met with numerous tour operators and travel companies from Japan at that show. And while I was there, I actually met a host of folks from Brand USA, which is the kind of the governing body of tourism in our country, kind of like the Convention Bureau of the U.S. Instead of each city or state having convention bureaus, the country has one, is Brand USA. So I thereafter was answering your question as far as getting to Japan. I did get invited. Wasn't the best of time. It was literally a week and a half before last year's induction, but I couldn't say no. And I got invited to travel with the Brand USA mission to Osaka and Tokyo. So I met with about 30 or so tour operators, travel companies there, about 100 travel agents. And then in September, we actually went back to Tokyo to the Expo. It's a travel trade, the largest travel trade show in Japan every year. And we had a booth at the Expo. We also had, was 2 days of travel trade and 2 days of consumer. So we met with additional travel folks, another 20 or 30, a lot of duplication, which was a good thing. We met companies 2 and 3 times over the course of that, from May till September. And then we met with the consumer market as well, people who just might be interested in travel. So yes, we've been grooming the Japanese side for quite some time, and it's just we planted a lot of seeds, Dan, and the little seedlings are just starting to creep above the dirt and showing their heads at this point. So we're pretty excited about moving forward and what we are planning and hope to come to break that record of 87,000 from back when Cal and Tony got in.
Speaking of Ichiro, are you going to hire Japanese translators?
Yeah, we're in that process also. I actually have hired a Japanese employee as an outside employee in Tokyo, and she is kind of man in the fort over there, doing a lot of our communications, and we are planning on having translators on the buses, depending on the grouping. We have some groups that are coming over, which we obviously already know needs a dedicated translator. And then we've got the retail market. So as you know, we've got onesies and twosies. You don't have to be in a group. We build a group, and depending on that group, we're kind of funneling people into certain departures and sections. So we then will have an interpreter on those particular buses too. So we are working that right now. It's not the easiest because upstate New York, between pretty much Syracuse and Albany, there's not a lot of Japanese that live through there. So we do have a couple of openings to have some Japanese translators join on board to make life as simple as possible for the Japanese travelers and fans that come.
Since CC Sabathia starred for the Yankees and Billy Wagner starred for the Mets, do you anticipate many people will drive to Cooperstown from New York for the July 27th inductions?
Yeah, when the other players, when Piazza got in and Jeter got in, Mariano got in, there were definitely people who drove up. A lot of times what happens is that because people turn it into a day experience, unfortunately, they'll wait to hear the weather forecast and come up in the morning, go to the induction and turn around and drive back home again. We have had people come on our programs, even though they live in the New York markets. They want to come for the whole weekend, and they do realize the transportation getting in and out of Cooperstown. Cooperstown is an interesting place. It's only about 2,000 people live there all year round, and it blossoms to, 60, 70, 80,000 people over the course of 3-4 days. So it gets pretty congested, and it's definitely an ease of operation to join us versus driving in on your own. But I would suspect that there will be people, probably more for following. My gut is for following CC than Billy Wag. Billy played for a lot of teams, so to kind of zero in that the Mets, there might be some. But I would think that Sabathia will draw more from the New York market than Wagner. But who knows?
How about getting fans from Philadelphia and Chicago because of Dick Allen, not to mention Pittsburgh and Cincinnati because of Dave Parker?
Yeah, we're actually already, we are up on the, just recently up on the Phillies website promoting the program to come on in. And we are also working, it hasn't been finalized yet, but we're close to having everything up and set to have Dave Parker as well, with some photos and link throughs with the Pirates. They're working along with us as well. We have not gotten much from Chicago thus far, but the Pittsburgh market and Cincinnati definitely will come on through. And Philadelphia, it's interesting. The Philadelphia fans seem to have an interest. Dick Allen was he was the man at the time that he was there. So people are coming up for him.
This is your chance to tell those people to leave their cars at home and sign up with Sports Travel and Tours. I know many people deliberately avoid Cooperstown because it's hard to find rooms, parking tickets, or Hall of Fame access on induction weekend. But tell our viewers how your company solves those issues.
That's a great question, Dan. It's 100%. We've been doing this for a long time. We are the official licensed company of the Baseball Hall of Fame, as you mentioned before. And with that, it gives us an opportunity to deliver to the fans an easy and hassle-free few days where you just need to sit back and have fun. You don't have to worry about where to stay, where to eat, where to go, where to park, how to get there. All you need to do is be on our motor coach from whatever hotel and type of program. We have a variety of different programs. You just need to be on the coach in the morning, and we drop you off right in front of the Hall of Fame. And when you come in on Friday or Saturday, we drop you right off in front of the hall. If you're wearing one of our lanyards, you literally will walk off the bus. You'll go into a special entrance through the library entrance in the rear of the building. And within minutes, you will be in the Hall of Fame, where if you came on your own, you would be out in front of the hall on a line that sometimes stretches down the entire block just to get an admission ticket to get into the hall. And you could literally spend an hour waiting to get into the Hall of Fame, where if you're wearing our credentials, you can either walk in the front doors and avoid all of the crowd out front, or you can walk in the library entrance. And all you need to really do is just wait. You've been there, Dan. You know it. You see it. You just wave like this. You show your credentials and you walk in the door. So at the end of the day as well, we also, after the parade, pick you up right in town. We have you congregate after the parade is over on Saturday night, 7 o'clock. If you were driving on your own, you would have to park your car outside of town. Town is shut down. You cannot drive in Main Street. You can't park downtown. The roads are all shut off. So the only way to get in, if you drive on your own, you've got to be able to park your car somewhere, and then you have to wait for a shuttle vehicle to pick you up and bring you into town. And that could take quite some time just waiting online to get into a shuttle bus to bring you into town. So at the end of the parade, Saturday night, we pick you up right in town. You hop on your motor coach and you're on your way to the hotel. Takes a little bit of time to obviously load everybody, but we're there. And then on Sunday for the induction, we come in the morning and we drive right to the induction site. Our motor coach literally pulls in. It's a huge, big grassy area. Almost picture it as a huge Woodstock. We're off to the left, and our motor coaches literally pull in and drop you right at the induction site, which if you were driving on your own, you'd have to park outside of town. Again, either walk a couple of miles or wait for the shuttle buses in order to bring you into town. So we just make it really easy. It does have some expense to it, of course, but everything that you want to do in life, if you want to enjoy yourselves, sometimes you might have to spend a couple of bucks to do it. And we do keep it affordable because it is a group program. It is definitely ease of operation. The people who join us, if they've ever done it on their own, they would never do it on their own ever again. We've gotten some rave reviews from people that are just mind blowing. If they came one year on their own and then they came on the trip with us, they're on the trip with us for as many times they come in for the induction moving forward, just because they know how enjoyable it is.
We're talking with Jay Smith, owner operator of Sports Travel and Tours.
Sports Travel and Tours is the official tour operator of the Baseball Hall of Fame. How long have you had that relationship, and how does it help you and your customers, even though we already heard just a little bit of that?
Well, our partnership is great. It's one of these alliances that it was actually just Cal Ripken year. So what was that, 2007, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's been since 2007. That's when we signed our first agreement. And it's been just an amazing relationship between the two organizations. We have worked really hard. We have gelled together incredibly well. It took a little time to learn one another, but now we know one another and we work really in unison extremely well. And the benefit is to our travelers. Because of that relationship that we have, the things that we can provide to the travelers are just easier. No matter what it is in relation to the hall, whether it be a special project, something people need from us, parking, the giveaways and handouts that we get, so you don't have to look for them on your own. As Dan, you would call them tchotchkes.
Yes.
Everything that we possibly can do with the hall, we do for our travelers. We do have also on a couple of programs an artifact spotlight, and that's kind of cool, where they take out some type of memorabilia that is not on the floor. You can't really see it. It's down in the basement, basically, being taken care of. And there are times where they'll bring up certain historical pieces, whether it be a Babe Ruth bat or a ball that somebody, a special ball that was hit for a home run. All really good stories that are behind that. And that program we also feature on a number of our programs. So the partnership has just been outstanding. It really can't be much better. I mean, you can always improve, but we've just gotten it to a point where it really works for both organizations. And now that we're also heavily embedded going to Japan, as well as representing I Love New York, the counties of Otsego County and Schoharie County, which is right next door to the Hall of Fame. We're pretty much, if you want to call it, in a sales mode for upstate New York and those counties and organizations and all through that whole region, including from Albany to Buffalo and all in between, because there are people who come in, especially the Japanese market. They're going to come into either New York or Boston on flights, and they're going to come through and see additional sights and sounds within the state of New York, not just Cooperstown.
The Hall of Famers, their families, and their guests stay at, and I want to thank you for pronouncing it for me, the Otsego. Did you say?
Oh, it's the Otisaga.
Otisaga. Thank you. A stately lakefront hotel in Cooperstown. Finding anything else right in town isn't easy, but sports travel and tours worry about that. Where do you house your guests, Jay?
Well, interesting. It's the Otisaga Hotel, but it's Otsego Lake. So you put those two pronunciations together, Roger. It's not that easy.
No, it's not.
The Otisaga Hotel is on Otsego Lake, and you're just next door to Schoharie County. So you add all of those. Took me a lot of years to pronounce Schoharie. Anyway, you are correct. The Otisaga Hotel is taken over by the Hall of Fame. That is where all of the players and the dignitaries of MLB stay. It is impossible to get in there. There's security. You can't even go near the place unless you actually are there. We do have one program that we call the Gold Glove, which happens to stay in Cooperstown. It's Cooperstown does not have a lot of hotels.
No.
It's actually just got like 3. And they are also taken over by the Hall of Fame, because not all of the cousins, the relatives, and everybody from the players, and I don't know if they have an actual number. I'm pretty sure that they can kind of invite like as many people as they want, and eventually the Hall of Fame figures out where they're staying. We don't have anything to do with that, but the Hall of Fame does house them, and they take over the majority of the space in Cooperstown. We have one hotel, one program. It's only got 20 rooms. I think we might have one room left, or we're sold out on it. It only takes 40 people, but that stays in Cooperstown. We do have a couple of great programs that stay in Oneonta, which is only about a half an hour away. And those also do all the same things as the trip that's the hotel that's in Cooperstown. The only difference is you got to hop on the motor coach and drive a half an hour, which is pretty harmless. And we've got a couple of programs that stay there as well. And then for people flying in, the majority of our programs are actually housed in Albany, because that is the closest to where the gateway to where the flights come in. So everybody's got to fly in and out of there. So we've got literally dozens of hotels. I'm holding on to thousands of rooms for this summer. We also have extended ourselves because of Pittsburgh and Cleveland and Cincinnati people potentially driving in. We do also have a couple of programs that are staying in Utica, which is about an hour outside of Cooperstown. Okay. And that's a little bit more to the west. The west part of west, it's in the middle of New York State, but it's not all the way to, it's a couple of hours to Albany from Utica. So we have some programs there. And we also, if anybody wants to gamble, we have the Turning Stone Casino as well, and a program staying at Turning Stone, which you can actually take any of our trips. We have a moderate program, which is a 3-day Friday, Saturday, Sunday program that stays generally in a moderate type hotel, like a Hampton Inn, Hilton Garden Inn, that type property. And then we have full service hotels that move up from there, kind of like Marriott and Hilton, that have restaurants and bars right in the hotel. And then we've got the Turning Stone Casino and Resort, if people would like to expand themselves to a property of that nature. So we pretty much cover almost everybody's kind of budget from low end to high, as well as everybody's different style of hotels. And we stretch it from pretty much, again, Utica to the west and Albany to the east, and then Cooperstown, kind of like a triangle. And we've got hotels all within that triangle. It's not an easy, there's not a lot of hotels in between any of those places. You drive from Albany to Cooperstown, about an hour and 15 minutes. I call it harmless hour and 15 minutes, guys. And the reason I call it harmless is when you get up in the morning Saturday and you haven't been to Cooperstown ever, you're kind of really excited. You're going to the induction, you're going to the hall, you're having a cup of coffee, you're on the motor coach. Halfway through, you start rolling through some beautiful, beautiful upstate New York terrain, patchwork quilt farmland, just beautiful rolling hills. It's just really, really kind of cool to see if you've never been through there before. And then by the time you start getting a little itchy, the tour host that's on the bus starts describing what's going to be going on for the day, gives you some helpful hints. And by the time you actually start feeling like, all right, are we almost there yet? We're there. We make the turn onto Route 80 and Otsego Lake. How'd I do, Roger? It's Otsego Lake. Otsego Lake is on the left, and it's a beautiful drive down into Cooperstown. And it really is a harmless, even if you're in Albany, the hour and 15, 20 minutes it takes, it's really pretty harmless. In reverse, it's actually even better, because when you get on the motor coach at the end of the day, after the parade, and you had a great day in town, you don't even make it back to the main road, and the bus is conked out. And by the time you even start waking up, we're back in Albany. So it's really a pretty quick shot.
Now, you did touch on this, so hopefully I'm not repeating, but price is another concern for prospective sports travel and tour passengers. But don't you offer various levels to suit people's budgets?
We do. So we have, as I had mentioned, we have our basic, what we call the base hit. The base hit is a 3-day program. It's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It stays generally at a limited service hotel. Limited service basically means there's breakfast, there's a nice hotel room, it's clean, it's located near things, and that's it. So it's just a comfortable, as I mentioned, like a Holiday Inn Express, a Hampton Inn, that type of style hotel. And then that program is our lower cost program because the accommodations are a little less costly. The rest of it is pretty much the same. Our motor coach cost is the same, that type of thing. Our welcome reception that we have the first night may be a little different. The base hit programs go out to a local restaurant for a bite to eat. The other programs might have a bigger meal at the hotels, catered meal type of thing. Also having a speaker, which may come up in one of the questions you have. Talking about baseball and sports and the induction. So you kind of build, basically, is what it is. So you take your bare basic package, my moderate program. You can then stay at a nicer hotel. You can have then better seats, actually, if you want. We have a program that the ones that stay, actually in all of them, you can buy into what we call our VIP seating. So we have our home run trip, as an example, stays in Albany at the Marriott, and then you stay, instead of the general admission seats, we stay in the VIP seats, which is where the players, the media, the families all sit. So it is a sectioned off area. Dan, I think, had a picture of that before a little bit. The other people on our other programs, we also take care of, because this is what's called lawn seating, and people are traveling from distances. everybody knows when you go to the bowl, your kids are going to the ballpark. You bring one of those folding folding seats in a camping bag. So you can see actually on this picture here, there's a fence, a little picket fence there in the middle.
Yeah.
In front of that fence is where the VIP seats are. There's the media and the players. It's a roped off section. You can't get into it unless you're on a program with us or you're part of the media and families, or you sit in the outside of that fence, which again you can actually see some of the fold up camping chairs. Some of those are probably ours, and we set those up for you. So we bring them. We go in ahead of time. We're generally sitting actually off to the right-hand side of, which you can't really see here. It's actually one of the closest places that you can get to the stage, sitting out in the lawn area. It's out on the right-hand side of that photo. And we actually go in, Roger, a couple of days early, and we set up rows by busload, 55 in a row. And they're all set up ahead of time. So when our motor coaches pull into the Clark Center parking area that we talked about before,
Yes.
people get off the coach and they literally walk over to the seats, whether it's the VIP seats or our seats that we set up in the lawn. They just walk over to those seats. We show them where they are, and everybody has a seat. Everybody has somewhere to put their fanny to sit, and they don't have to worry about carrying it with them. So that's part of the program too, as far as the differences in levels, as you asked. So you can go anywhere from a moderate price program that generally runs just around $1,000, and then you can go up to $2,000 and $3,000 and $4,000 depending on what else is added to it. One of actually our programs, the Gold Glove, which is just about sold out, as I said, that actually comes with an autographed ball of your choosing of the players that are inducted.
Yeah.
So that's part of the package.
That is cool. We know Sports Travel and Tours also offers packages that include a game or two sandwiched around induction weekend. Please share on that.
Yes, we do that. We have actually a few programs this year that are doing that, and it's more looking towards some of the Japanese markets specifically. But we've got one program which we call the Induction Plus. It's a staple program for us. So the induction is in the middle. The induction days are in the middle. Those don't change for any program. But we've got one trip this year that actually we try usually to start it in New York, but the schedule wasn't kind enough for us. But it worked out fairly well because this trip this year starts in Boston. And the cool part of that, it's on Thursday, actually, the 24th. The cool part of it starting in Boston is on Friday, the Dodgers play the Red Sox at Fenway Park. And we all know who plays on the Dodgers. Actually, a few players now from Japan play on the Dodgers. But Ohtani is coming into town with his whole crew. And on Friday night, we actually in Boston are going to start off with that game. So it's a Thursday Thursday arrival. Friday, we have the day in Boston to enjoy some of the sights and sounds of the city. And then the game that night. And then Saturday, we leave in the morning and we come into Cooperstown. So you get you don't get in till around 1 in the afternoon. So you get the parade that night at 6 o'clock, same parade everybody else is going to. And then Sunday is the induction is the same. Monday is the add-on day, which a number of our weekend programs do this too. It used to be called the Legends of the Game, and they just changed that up. And it's not called Legends anymore. And I'm gonna have to look here real quick because it was just changed, and it's not called. The Legends is actually on Monday, where the players who were now inducted into the hall after the hubbub and the craziness of the weekend, they're a little bit more relaxed. They come to Doubleday Field and they enjoy. It's called the Road to Cooperstown Live. And on the Road to Cooperstown Live on Monday, this expanded program comes to this too. the players actually sit. Picture Doubleday Field. The right field line is all bleacher seats the entire way. And what they do is they put a stage up around first base, and the players sit on that stage, and everybody else, there's the bleachers right there. Thank you, Dan. The players, that's almost at first base too. The players then sit up on a stage, and they kind of kibitz with there's a moderator, and they just literally talk about their careers. There's Q&A, there's discussion, there's chatter, there's stories. It's just a fun atmosphere in the morning. So this Induction Plus expanded program goes to that, and when it's all over, instead of heading back somewhere to the hotel, we leave and we actually go down to New York City. And we have then, again, we're in New York for Monday night. All day Tuesday, we have a city tour set up, and then game at Yankee Stadium Monday that night, and then everybody departs the next day. So that's called the Induction Plus. We then have another one that does the same thing I just described. It starts in Boston, and it does Boston, Cooperstown, the Monday event. But instead of going to New York, it continues and goes to Niagara Falls, to Buffalo, stays a night in Buffalo, and then we leave from Buffalo and we head to Cincinnati because the Dodgers and Ohtani are playing in Cincinnati for 2 games. So now we get Ohtani and the Dodgers playing the Red Sox in Boston to start off the trip, and we end in Cincinnati with 2 games with Ohtani playing in Cincinnati, and then people fly home from Cincinnati. And I got one more on top of that quickly to tell you, which is a really cool one. It's called the Super Induction Plus. That one actually starts in LA first for 3 days. 3 days, couple of nights. We have a welcome reception the first night. We have a city tour the next day, and guess who's playing in LA?
Let me think. Must be the Dodgers.
You got it.
One.
The Dodgers, Ohtani and his whole crew again, and we're there for 2 games, and then that trip flies to Boston, and then picks up the trip that's starting in Boston, doing the Dodger game on that Friday night. That trip flies to Boston and then picks up exactly where the other trips were doing, which does Boston, the Hall of Fame, the Monday event, and that actually ends up in New York also. So we do definitely have some expanded programs. They're all really cool. They're all a little different. Some of them hit to your mention of budget. The shorter ones obviously less costly. The long one, which is like 2 weeks in length, is a pretty deep cost. Not per day. Per day, it actually breaks down, actually less costly per day than some of the other ones that are a little bit shorter. But they're really exciting, and I'm really excited to be offering them this year. It's really cool. And the Japanese market, I am hoping, absolutely, with Ohtani playing in LA, the Boston, and Cincinnati, you can get actually 5 games, all with the Dodgers playing on one of those trips.
Oh, wow. I had no idea the variety. It's great, Jay, and I appreciate that. I'm going to ask you a little bit more variety.
Yeah.
Speaking of baseball, you even offer trips to spring training, the All-Star game, and the postseason, plus regular season games packaged into regional trips such as the Great Lakes, California, the I-95 corridor on the East Coast. Do the spring training trips cover both the Cactus League in Arizona and the Grapefruit League in Florida?
They do. Most of our spring training programs we do as what we call FITs. FITs are what's the acronym is Flexible Independent Travel. So instead of them doing it because most people who go to spring training, it's interesting. The people who go on our multi-day road trip programs that cover like Toronto and Detroit, Cleveland, Detroit, Cincinnati, or out through, we have one called the Central Express or Central rivalry program. It does. It's generally, depending on the year, it's Chicago, St. Louis, Kansas City, Minneapolis, and Milwaukee. So we do that loop, and then we have a West Coast program that does Seattle, San Francisco, Oakland, or Sacramento at this point, down to LA, Anaheim, San Diego, and then a couple squeeze in Phoenix as well as Denver, and then we've got ones down through the South too, through Atlanta and Florida. So they're regionally set up. People who go on our multi-day baseball road trip programs, for the most part, they want to see the stadiums. There's a goal, and I always chuckle at it because it's an amazing goal to have. People come back and they say, my goal in life is to see every ballpark in the country. What a great goal to have. Well, we fulfill that for them on our baseball road trips. But people want to go to the stadiums where spring training, they don't really necessarily care about the stadiums as much as they want to see their own teams play, because it's the beginning of baseball. So spring training, we organize more as a per individual request as to where they want to see their team. And then we put together a program, we customize it, whether they want to go for 4 days, 6 days, 8 days, 10 days, whatever it is. And then the variety of hotels, Roger, that you mentioned, whether it be moderate hotels or deluxe hotels in Phoenix and Florida, or Arizona and Florida, not just Phoenix. And we'll customize a program, put it all together for them, and just give them a final document packet, and then they go and do that on their own. So it varies from year to year. We do both the Cactus League and Grapefruit League, not a problem. And then our real big popular program to start off with, we have one program, we call it the East Coast Classic, or the Classic, and it's a Washington, D.C. starting, does Washington, Baltimore, and Camden, goes up to the Phillies, hits New York for a couple of days, catching the Mets and Yankees, goes then to Cooperstown, and ends in Boston at Fenway. And it could go in that direction or possibly the other way. We have ones that also do start in Boston, depending on the schedule every year, and does, Boston, Cooperstown, New York, Philly, Baltimore, and DC. So that is a real popular route for anybody who's not ever been back to the East to see the ballparks. That's just a great trip for people to take. So we pretty much cover, you name it. We've got the All-Star game as well this year in Atlanta. We've got a great package for that. We're staying right at the Aloft Hotel, which is right on the plaza, right in Atlanta. You can't get any better location. You can literally walk. You can throw a ball. You can throw a baseball to the stadium from the hotel we're staying at. But it's really exciting. And, of course, you've got some great players, some great home run hitters at this point who will be at the All-Star game, and we're kind of excited about that one. We also have one called the All-Star Plus, and the All-Star Plus is the All-Star game, and the plus part of it is a couple of games, actually days in San Francisco, and before you head in, and guess who happens to be playing at that point on the All-Star Plus?
The Dodgers.
I bet you can't think.
The Dodgers. I'm betting.
Yeah, you know what? I've been to Japan now a couple of times, and it is absolutely incredible that Ohtani is just, it's off the charts. I mean, he is on every billboard. He is on every building. He's on every restaurant. He's on everything, everywhere. So we put in a couple of days in San Francisco because it's a great stopping point for people coming from Japan, and to have the Dodgers playing the Giants on top of it. So you can catch Ohtani for a couple of days in San Francisco, fly into LA. He's going to leave San Francisco when he's all done, and I'm sure he's flying to Atlanta at that point. I'm sorry, I said LA. Flying to Atlanta and then catching him and everybody else in the All-Star game.
Now, a moment ago, or maybe a few moments ago, you mentioned that in spring training, the teams or the people like to visit the teams. But if someone has a favorite ballpark like Wrigley Field or Fenway Park, can they sign up for a historic ballparks trip, with sports travel and tours?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we don't have a specific just historic ballparks, but we have trips that include the historic ballparks of Fenway and Wrigley. Obviously, they're the oldest at this point.
Yeah.
Still a big draw, believe it or not, is Camden Yards. It's not the oldest ballpark, but that still has a pretty good draw because it was the first kind of retro stadium out there. All the other stadiums have kind of mimicked them. I think the to answer a question that you might ask me in regards to what's my favorite ballpark, the people's choice right now, and I think it's because of just the location. PNC Park has taken the number one slot as far as ballparks, and it's not necessarily just the ballpark; it's the way they situated it. It's right on the edge of town. You're looking out over the bridges over the river, and the ballpark faces town. So when you're standing at the edge of downtown Pittsburgh, you're literally looking into PNC Park. And it's just when you're in the game, you're actually looking at the skyline of Pittsburgh in the background. It's absolutely outstanding. It's unfortunate that some of the other cities didn't pick up on, like Washington is an example. I mean, the National Park is a great ballpark, but gosh, would it have been amazing if it was turned in the right direction, kind of see the Washington Monument or the Capitol or something like that as the background. PNC is great. So yes, the old historical parks. Dodger Stadium is right up there too. Everybody loves getting to Dodger Stadium. It was built in an incredible ravine, as everybody knows it, and it is down in the dirt, and it is pretty to watch and see while you're sitting there watching the game. There you're sitting out watching a game, and you're looking out, at the hills. Unfortunately, those hills right now are a little smoky. I'm looking forward to that getting over. It's been absolutely just horrific to see.
It has been bad out here, yes. Yeah. But yeah, Dodger Stadium has great sight lines. I've seen the ones from Seattle and San Diego as well. Those are beautiful looking out onto them. But I'm looking forward to PNC. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with Jay Smith, owner-operator of Sports Travel and Tours.
Jay, sports travel and tours passengers get so many extras, such as Hall of Fame pins and yearbooks, reserved seating, VIP access to the Baseball Hall of Fame, and even the stories of longtime Major League umpire Al Clark, who spent 26 years in his job and then wrote a book about it. In fact, doesn't Al give a humorous opening night talk and then sign and sell his book afterward?
Yeah, he sure does. Al Clark, number 24. He is a hoot and a half. He's got stories. He's got charisma that just would explode this screen. I mean, he broke the mold, that's for sure. And we have a couple of our programs that are in Albany. Actually, a couple of our programs, even in Cooperstown and Oneonta, have a session with Al. But the opening night in Friday is at the Albany Marriott on our infield and home run packages, and we have dinner, and then at about 8 o'clock, Al goes on, and I have to yank him off. He'd still be there from last year if he had the opportunity. He just never stops. He's an amazing storyteller. He opens it up to a Q&A. Most people who watch baseball don't really ever think about the umpires, and it's quite amazing that once you hear Al talk, not just necessarily stories, but just even the Q&A of, how do the umpires get to where they're going? How does their luggage get there? What do they need? Where do they suit up? How do they go to the bathroom when they're on the field for 9 innings? Type of questions that you would never believe get answered. And once you listen to Al's stories, and we call it an ump's eye view, seeing and learning baseball from an ump's eye view. Once you hear him once, you will never watch a baseball game the same ever again. You will watch it differently because Al has a saying that he asks people, how many teams are playing a baseball game? And everybody, of course, says 2. And he says, no. And everybody looks at him like he's crazy. And then he comes back and he says, no, there's 3 teams. There's 2 teams that hit the ball, and there's the third team that makes sure that the hit ball is in the right place, and that's the umpire team.
Yeah.
So once you hear how he explains things and what they do and how they move and where they go on certain plays, and you literally the next time you go to a game, you will watch the umpires almost as much as you watch the game, and it is exciting. So we do have a number of programs that feature Al, and the giveaways and the yearbooks. We've got a couple of programs that have it all. I mean, there's not much else you can include in. The only thing that we do encourage people to do in Cooperstown is go to the local restaurants. There you go. There's one right there. Perfect timing, Dan. Go to the couple of local restaurants in Cooperstown because they're really quaint. Cooperstown, Main Street in Cooperstown, I call Main Street USA. It's just a delightful town. They've taken away. There's not the McDonald's and Burger Kings and Starbucks. They're all on the outside of town. You can't see them from down. Everything downtown is local, and it's really just a cute, pleasant place to be. If you go once, you definitely want to come back again. If you're a baseball fan, oh my gosh, it's kind of like you died and went to heaven, being in Cooperstown.
Jay, every winter, so many named players like Juan Soto change uniforms through free agency. How do those changes impact sports travel and tours?
Yeah, I'm not a really big fan. It's great for baseball. It's great for the bigger teams that have bigger budgets and they can stack up programs. There are certain players, Dan, that need to just stay where they are. How much money do you possibly need in your life? I mean, is Juan Soto ever going to spend even half of what he's making over the next, 10 years? It's ridiculous.
15 years.
I'm sorry?
15 years.
15 years. Sorry, that's right. There's players like, Cal Ripken and Derek Jeter. I mean, could you imagine Derek Jeter being like in a Brewers uniform or a Rockies uniform? Sometimes it's just not right, but it's part of the game. It does have an impact on us primarily when it comes to the induction, because some of these players who have played with 6 teams, there's just not the same love that you gain from a player that's been with you for 8 or 10 or 15 years. You're just missing something. So that excitement level is not as big, and therefore for us, we don't get the same traction with the amount of travelers that want to come in, especially for people that may have played for that many teams. They're great players, of course, and they demand people to come to see them, but you're not getting the affiliation of those particular fan bases. You're getting the general baseball fan.
That's probably why fans like ballparks, because they don't want to get married to any players now.
Yeah, exactly.
We mentioned the World Series, but doesn't sports travel and tours take groups to things like the Super Bowl, Stanley Cup playoffs, NCAA Final Four, Kentucky Derby, Indy 500, and regular season games in all the major sports?
We do. Actually, we have a kind of a slogan: is any game, any place, any time for any sport. Because if we don't have it packaged or pre-packaged, we can customize it. So depending on the persons and what their budgets are, if somebody wants to, the example I always use for that is somebody wants to go, let's say, see the Bulls play on Friday night in Chicago. The Blackhawks are playing on Saturday, and the Bears are in town on Sunday. Tight scheduling wise, but it happens periodically like that. We don't have a prepackaged package for something like that, and we customize it specifically to the likings of that particular traveler. So let's say they're a football fan and they want to sit on the 50-yard line of the football game, but since they're in town, the Blackhawks are in town. They're not huge hockey fans, but they're like, let's go to the Blackhawk game. But they don't want to spend the same money to sit, on the red line, center ice, but they're fine sitting in the upper corners. We'll put together the program specifically to their budget. So we do have, pretty much any sport, anywhere. We do things, soccer programs to Europe. independent programs. We've got all the football in Europe now too, which we can't package up every single game, but we do again customize it. And Super Bowl's coming up. Final Four is great. Kentucky Derby, we've got a program. So as you mentioned it, Dan, you name it, we can do it. It just might not be all pre-set up for you. We just use our expertise and knowledge as to where to stay, what are the better locations, game tickets, the access to different tickets available, and budgetary hitting budgets as well. Very important.
And what's new this year for sports travel and tours?
Oh boy, we're focusing right now on the Japanese market. That is relatively new. We've been working this over the last year. Every year we do pretty much come up with a new program. These expanded programs that I just mentioned to you, covering the All-Star Game plus San Francisco. This past year, actually, we did a program which I'm going to bring back in 2026. We went to the Midnight Sun Game up in Fairbanks, and that was pretty cool. So we did a program that covered the Midnight Sun Game in Fairbanks. There's no lights at the ballpark. It's 10 o'clock at night. The first pitch goes off. The game ends at 1 a.m. It's still light out.
Yeah.
There's no lights. So we did Fairbanks. We did the Chena River, which was great. We saw how dog sleds work. And then we went down to Denali National Park and a couple of days there. People had the option to expand their program in Denali, and they went off. A couple of people did helicopter rides over Denali. One person did a plane ride. Other people did dog sled type demonstrations. And then we went down to Anchorage. We caught a couple of Anchorage has a league there, which a lot of major league players have played in, either there or the Cape Cod League. And it's more people than you would ever know that played in these lower leagues. And we did catch a game down in Kenai, Soldotna, as well as in Anchorage. Really fun games. If you like the game of baseball, really fun games, beautiful settings. And then we caught an incredible day on a boat out in Prince William Sound, south of Anchorage, which was absolutely exquisite. We went to Mount Alyeska and took the tram ride up. So I'm going to bring that back in 26. That combines baseball with some great sightseeing. And this year, to answer your question as far as new, we are doing a program this year. We've got a host of about 150 people now that have gotten to every big league ballpark. We have a core group of about 50, and there's about 30 to 35 every year who now are nipping away at the minor league parks. So we've got a program this year. We call it the major minor. This year it's the major minor less the major. Last year we did Reno, Sacramento, San Jose, and ended up seeing a Giant game at the end of the trip. And this year, we're actually going to be starting off in Salt Lake City, catching the AAA game in Salt Lake. And then we're going up to Yellowstone National Park and the Grand Tetons for a couple of days. There's no baseball there, but we're going to be covering a few days, catching Jackson Hole for lunch, ending up in West Yellowstone, and a couple of days in Yellowstone National Park before we head on out to Great Falls, Montana for a game there. We'll catch a game in Missoula, and then we end up in Spokane for a game at the end of the trip and staying at the Grand Hotel, which is just really cool place in Spokane, Washington. So that is a new, we're starting to, every year we're bringing in like just a new twist. Last year was the Midnight Sun Game in Alaska with Denali National Park and Prince William Sound. And this year is getting to Yellowstone and the Grand Tetons. So they're twists on what we normally do, and we're bringing to the fans some places around the world that they would like to be able to go back to. And I still have in the background, we probably will also bring back eventually a program to Cuba. I happen to have a gentleman right now who is living with me as a under a government program, and he is from Cuba. And when he goes back, we are going to structure some programs and do some Cuban baseball and some Cuba trips there as well. And so we've got some other things. And next year is our 30th anniversary. So I'm planning on, not sure yet what we're going to do. We might actually expand here and do a river trip through Europe, going from Budapest to Prague, kind of, sort of, and throwing in potentially, or maybe through the Netherlands, and throwing in some European baseball and potentially a soccer match within the river cruise. So I'm trying to come up with something new and exciting that's something a little bit different.
We're talking with Jay Smith about sports travel and tours.
Our viewers are curious about the company's background and your background. Where are you based? How and when did you get started, and how did you expand? And knowing of the unexpected obstacle like COVID-19, how were you able to handle that? Yeah.
How many hours do you have on this show?
Yes.
That's a mouthful, and obviously, I can get passionate with what you're sharing with me because you guys are listening at the same time I'm talking. I just get pumped up. When people ask me questions about my program, it just makes me smile, because there's one thing that I have been able to, as far as how I got started. The interesting part is my life has been catered to making other people happy. We deliver smiles. That's what we have a tagline is, we create fun for others, because that's what we do. For us, it's hard work putting everything together. But the final goal is seeing people smile, having things crossed off their bucket lists. So the company started, it is 30 years. I've been in this industry for, I know I look better than I am as far as my age, but I've been in this industry since my first travel program as a staff person was 1972. Yeah.
You saw me mouth, right? I was 3 years old.
But anyway, this program, I didn't know I was going to be doing this. I majored in criminal justice. I was going into probation work with juveniles. I guess to a degree, I'm a little bit in probation work with juveniles. I just corral them a little differently than I would have with juveniles. It started on a whim with an old colleague of mine asking me a question years ago, and the question was, can you combine going on vacation with getting to games and events? And I'll never forget my answer, Roger, was, you can do anything that you want in this world as long as you have a few things. You need some knowledge. You need some wherewithal to get it done. You need some smarts along the way, and you need some money, because you then can do anything you want. It does take effort. The first year that we developed this program, we had 3 itineraries, which are still actually in place. Our East Coast trip I mentioned before, New York, Cooperstown, Boston. Our West Coast, our Midwest one out through Chicago, St. Louis, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, that area. And then we did have the West Coast trip as well. And those are still in place, because those ballparks are still there. They may be new. But when we did this program, the first year, we ended up with 99 people. We had 3 trips, and that's what got us started off. The following year, we actually got very lucky. We had 2 things that hit up for us. We had a small little blurb that was about 8 lines that made it into the back of Playboy magazine, believe it or not.
Yes.
And the second piece is that we were able, if you remember, Dan, the old New York Times used to have a travel section, and there was a Q&A section in the New York Times. And we were able to get somebody who asked the question, said, I want to bring my father to get to all the ballparks. Do you know of any companies that offer that? And lo and behold, the New York Times travel writer at that point found us, and we had this little teeny blurb in the New York Times Q&A. And the beauty of the New York Times is it's syndicated. So we had like 50 newspapers the following week all carried that same Q&A that the New York Times had the week before. and that just kind of mushroomed from there. So we did start off with just baseball. More people happen to vacation during baseball season, from pretty much, April, May through September. That's when the majority of people take vacations and holidays. So we started with baseball, and then it did indeed expand it there afterwards through all of the other sports. It took time. Football came next, and then we swung into the other sports, years later. How did we get through COVID? You're talking to a guy that doesn't like to say the word no and doesn't like to lose. I could be a gracious loser, but it just wasn't in my fabric. I just couldn't lock the door. There were colleagues of mine that have no business. They had zero business and shut down, or they laid off all of their staff. I kept every one of my staff through the pandemic for the entire time. It was a lot of work. We might not have worked full time, but I needed everybody in the beginning because we had literally thousands of people that were on the books. If you remember, the guy by the name of Derek Jeter was supposed to be inducted that following year in 2020, and he would have broken all of these records from Cal Ripken and Tony Gwynn's day. But COVID hit. We had literally deposits. We had to call everybody, get a hold of people. This is while COVID was going on. The only bonus that we had was everybody was home.
Yeah.
The only benefit. But we had to roll people forward. We had to cancel people off. We had to refund people. So I needed my staff to do that. So long story short there, I kept everybody on. Thank God we made it through. And I actually have everybody still to this day that I had during COVID. My staff is still with me. I have one new person who fulfilled the shoes of a retiring person, but everybody else is still with me. And I'm a very fortunate guy that my staff, I took care of them as best as I could when the chips were down, and they've taken care of me since. And it's just been awesome. So it's, it's a lot of hard work. My background again came from my original entree into this business was I ran actually camping trips for students throughout North America. That was my original getting into travel, and one thing led to the next, and this program started again just by this one person asking me, can you operate a program that combines vacation and travel? We put together some itineraries. The program was born. Eventually that took off, and I left my old program behind and just stuck with Sports Travel and Tours, and it's been, beautiful ride other than the hiccups along the way. I do deal with when the economy tanked in 08, 09, that was not pretty. We had the Major League Baseball strike back in, what was that, 94, I think?
94.
Yeah.
We were only 4 years old at that point. That was horrible. We had to deal with that. It was the middle of August when they went on strike.
Yeah.
The only lucky part we had that day, we had a program that was in New York City, and the Yankees we couldn't get to the Yankee game, but we got lucky. It was playing on Broadway? The show, Damn Yankees.
Oh.
So we ended up getting tickets to go see Damn Yankees that night instead of the Yankee game. How's that for creativity?
Hell yeah, that works. How and where do you find your bus hosts? Are many of them educators who have summers off?
Yeah, we do have a lot of actually teachers. They're beautiful people to have on with us. They're smart. They're organized. They generally are pretty good, with personalities. If they like baseball, that's even better. But we do have, it's not only just actually educators. We do get many over the years. The one thing that we actually get a lot is we have people who travel with us. They have a great time. They come off their programs and they say, oh my God, I would love to get involved with something like this.
Oh,
what do I need to do? So we have a lot of actually past travelers that are tour hosts with us, and they're great because they understand both sides.
Yes.
They know how it was when they traveled, and then when they're leading the way, they know how hard it is, but they also understand what needs to happen in order to bring those smiles to the people and the dedicated work and effort that goes into it. So we get a lot of past travelers. We're very happy when people come on board with us.
With overflow crowds expected in Cooperstown for this year's induction weekend, Do you plan to hire new bus hosts? I imagine so, right? But what is the most buses you've ever had? And do you anticipate breaking that record this summer?
Yeah, we actually have the plans to break that record this summer. The most that we ever done is 25.
Wow.
We touched one year actually for the Baseball Hall of Fame was 25. We actually one year touched about 2,000 people. We used to be the official travel company also for the Football Hall of Fame
Oh,
years
wow.
ago.
Yeah.
And one year was a really big year. I forget who was even in. I think it was Steve Young and Emmett Thomas. And we had a host of people that were big, big travelers. And we took care of they called them ticket packages, which we had to bundle up. It was like a big package of where we didn't provide all of the travel arrangements, but we provided all of the ticket packages with all of the extras surrounded by it. But we had to communicate with everybody. So we are expecting to break those numbers this year. As far as new people, we might end up needing some new. We had a lot of people back. Prior to Jeter year, I brought some new people on board in 2019. So we had a lot of assistant hosts then because in preparation of Jeter and breaking the record with him. So we were all prepared already. So I have a lot of people already kind of in the hopper, so to speak. I also in my world of travel, I've got a lot of colleagues and organizations that I'm involved in. So if I put the feelers out to my owners network group and a couple of associations that I've been on, boards, if I put the feelers out to other travel companies, I'll be able to have as many tour hosts and guides that I will need. If I send the all points bulletin out, anybody interested in, and we've already had that already. So I'm not really too worried about having experienced staff. They may not be experienced in Cooperstown, but we do prior to running the actual event, Roger, we actually bring our tour host in for a couple of days of training. And not only do we do the book work, but we also run the route. So we go into Cooperstown, we do a setup, we go to the hall, we show everybody where we're loading up, where we're dropping off. So they do get an opportunity. There already will be travel people, so they'll understand the movement of what needs to be done with counting heads and people and meals and things of that nature. And then the rest of it, we will be able to train them with really no problem. So if you're interested, give me a shout.
Oh, I definitely will. Now, I have to ask, how does the acronym work? Because you said pre-Jeter year. Is that the great marking line? So is it post? But then no, it's the same acronym. How does that work, Jay? And I'm just screwing with you, Jay. I'll probably talk to you about that later.
Not a problem.
But how do you? I caught that. How do Travel Itch Radio viewers book trips with sports travel and tours, Jay?
Well, of course, we have our website, which is the same name of our company. It's the same old W. You don't even need www anymore, but it's www.sportstravelandtours, and the and is AND. Make sure you got that AND in there. Sportstravelandtours.com. There you go. And we also have a toll-free 800 number, which is 800-662-4424. That's 800-662-4424. And we're online. We also have a virtual assistant now on our Baseball Hall of Fame induction packages specifically. And we've trained the assistant to answer every possible question that you could be asked. It hardly gets stumped any longer. Every now and then somebody will ask something crazy that doesn't answer. But it's been very helpful to have that because we can literally talk to people now 24/7. Somebody's interested in going to the induction and they get on, 2:00 in the morning because they're awake, or they live across the world in Japan, they can go online and get their questions answered right through our virtual assistant. That's 24/7. Beautiful
Amazing.
thing.
Our guest today has been Jay Smith, owner operator of Sports Travel and Tours. Thank you so much for being our guest, Jay.
It's been a pleasure. As you can tell, I'm passionate about what I do. We love bringing fun to people, and we hope to see you this summer. If you want to possibly see the induction or call us for some other sport, we're here. Appreciate you having me.
Okay, thank you. You will see me for sure. and maybe Roger too.
Sorry
And-
we went a little over our time, but
You're good, Jay.
all right, cool.
It's always good to talk with you, Jay. And that's it for this edition of Travel Witch Radio. This is Dan Schlossberg along with Roger Noriega saying thank you for your time this time. Until next time, join our guest will be Lori Sermon, Communications Manager of Visit Irvin in Irving, Texas. And thank you, Roger, for holding up my book on Hank Aaron, my second Hank Aaron biography. Hope to see you all next week, viewers. And in the meantime, thanks for watching. Good evening and stay safe. And if I can figure out how to play this music, I'll be in great shape.
If only.
There it is. Play. Not cooperating. Okay.